If you want to know the secret that doubled my product career growth, it wasn't another certification or framework. It was hiring an accountability coach. I'm Ross Webb, and after leading product teams at Amazon, Just Eat, and many others, I've learned that just like master craftsmen have always relied on mentors to accelerate their journey from apprentice to master, exceptional product leaders need guidance to truly excel. And while there are 4 essential competencies in product leadership: data, analytics, prioritization, stakeholder management, and voice of the customer, today we're focusing on the accelerator that makes you better at all of them: effective coaching and mentorship. Now think about your product career right now. Are you progressing as quickly as you'd like? Do you sometimes feel stuck, knowing where you want to go, but unsure about how to get there? Well, that's where great mentorship makes all the difference. And this episode of Product Team Success is brought to you by Top Roads, the community putting productivity back in product management. We have an incredible lineup of mentorship experts today. Coming up, you're going to be meeting Arttu as he shares the delicate balance of coaching in growth companies. And Bart-Jan Pors will be revealing how to build your personal board of directors. And Prachi Garg will demonstrate how to identify promising talent. And then Chris Watson will be showing us how to transform one-to-ones into powerful coaching conversations. So Arttu, let's start with the challenge every product leader faces: finding the right balance in coaching. And how do you strike that perfect note between pushing for results and maintaining motivation?
Especially with growth companies, it's important to balance between being too harsh and being too soft. So if you're too harsh, you probably will get into the results that you eventually want, but the result might be that you get disconnected from your team. They are no longer motivated and commit to the cause. And at the same time, if you are too soft, the team probably will like it a lot, but they tend to get lazy as well. So this is a constant balance for leaders to do the right thing and balance between these two extremes. Yeah, and it's also one of the reasons why I work as a product leader. I really like coaching, and I find it important, not only because I need to do it, but to pass the knowledge to the next generation. I'm lucky to have been working in product for 20 years, and I know quite a bit. I like to work individually with the coaches, always offering them help if they need it. Usually, especially with juniors, it means that I set up one-to-one calls once or even twice a week and go through the issues that they have, especially like prioritization or what should I do next and who should I talk with next. Basic idea is that they set the agenda, and I try to help them with their issues as frequently as possible.
What I love about that approach, Arttu, is how it recognizes that both extremes can harm team performance. Your structured approach to regular one-to-ones with clear scorecards really help remove, let's say, the subjectivity from career progression. And moving on, Bart-Jan, you've developed a fascinating concept of a personal board of directors. Tell us a little bit more about this approach to mentorship.
Mentoring, I think, is a key aspect to progression in your career. And I think if you talk about career progression, for me, it all starts about knowing what you want. Where do you want to go? Where do you want to be in 1 month, 3 years, 10 years from now? Right? And that is a very personal and individual journey that can sometimes maybe even feel a little bit lonely as well, but you don't have to feel lonely in that at all, because you can ask people around you. You can build and leverage a network of people around you that can help, advise, and mentor you. And I think that's very key to the role of mentorship. And I would recommend building mentors around you to anyone that has an ambition to progress their careers and also to progress personally. For instance, what I'm personally in the process of building is what I would call a personal board of directors. So it's basically just like a company that has a board to respond to about the course and results of the company. I've basically built a sounding board of my personal directors, and I can highly recommend that. You can build a group of around 3 to 10 people, depending on what you like, that each brings something unique to your professional growth. and they may be more advanced in their careers, so they can show you the way as they've gone it before, and you can learn from that. But equally well, I think they may be peers at your level with whom you can spar as you go that similar route. Also in terms of quality, some people may be strong on the content side, otherwise on the networking advice. Third people maybe on more psychological and leadership advice. So think about how you build your group of directors, what you want to learn yourself, what you want to develop, and who you think can help you with that. That's the way I've composed my group, because really, and that's maybe underpinning it. If I think of high achievers or people that have an ambition to grow, what they need and what I think you can get, what I experience you can get from having the right mentors is three things. First, it's about continual learning and having a growth mindset. If you have the right mentors, they can really help you with that. The product people, my experience at least, tend to be inherently curious people, which is a good thing. So you want to learn. But at the same time, that's also my personal experience. As you're in the day-to-day of the operation and the weeds of what's happening, right? There may sometimes be a lot of pressure, and then it becomes tempting to deprioritize those things that are high important but not so urgent, right? Really, what we need to do when we want to grow is exactly focus on that quadrant, the high importance but not so urgent matters. So that's a call, and mentors can help you with that if you plan that. So plan and make time for learning. You know, what is it that I want, and what do I need to learn, and when am I going to do that? So cultivate that growth mindset.
That's brilliant, Bart-Jan, especially how you emphasize mentorship as a two-way street. Your point about focusing on high importance but not urgent matters really resonates with my experience. So moving on, Prachi, let's talk about identifying and developing talent. What signals do you look for when evaluating potential mentees?
It's a gamble. Hiring someone is a gamble, and you ask as many questions to understand. And also, I think, as you said, also give an opportunity to the person to ask questions, and you can start getting hints. If the person is asking about the company interest and asking about what the team would look like, what the company is growing in the next 3 years, so it tells you the person is quite interested in the organization. And if the person is not asking these type of questions.
I love how you focus on curiosity and engagement, Prachi. Those questions about company direction and team growth really reveal someone's potential and their commitment. Now, coming on to you, Chris, let's dive into making one-to-ones more effective. How do you structure these conversations for maximum impact?
What do people get wrong in one-to-ones? I think that, I think, as I say, it's a difficult balance to strike in a one-to-one between sort of structuring the conversation, building a relationship. There's a lot to do, and often managers will focus in their areas where they feel most comfortable. So it is harder to have a coaching conversation. It is harder to in a structured way, celebrate success. It's a muscle that you have to work. And often I think that managers shy away from working the muscle, and therefore it never becomes natural. And so I often encourage, when you're starting out in management and you're not used to having these, I call them coaching conversations, but a sort of a more rounded, sort of guided conversation. There's lots of tools and methodologies you can use, but actually all you're doing is building up a level of comfort with having conversations that you're just not used to having with your team. And so, and then it becomes over time a sort of second nature where you've got those tools built in already, and you can lead the conversation through them without it feeling like a sort of very structured conversation. Yeah, I think I've seen lots of different approaches to one-to-ones. I think they are a really important tool and your kind of main point of connection with the people in your team. I think just on a hygiene level, they should be regular and you should avoid moving them. And I think that just putting a sense of importance on that conversation for the people in your team. There's a perception if you shuffle them around and shorten them and move them, and that you don't see that as an important conversation. So I think there's a piece of hygiene around that. And then when you're in the one-to-ones, I think I tend to have a standing agenda that is a bit more natural than it sounds. I don't just work through the agenda, but it reminds us to make sure that we have a kind of a rounded conversation that covers a bunch of areas. I think within that, obviously, the sort of bonding and sharing as two humans is super important. So you need to find time for that in that moment. And that really helps build that bigger picture, and also just builds that level of trust between the two people. I think some of it is about sharing and celebrating success, because I think a lot of time people in one-to-ones like to talk about all the problems and the blockers and the issues, which I think is fine and I think is useful often, but let's use it also as a moment to celebrate success. I think it's also up to you as a leader to share sort of commercial business insights, this kind of open, honest, it creates a sort of open, honest environment where the people in your team feel that you're like, that there are no secrets, you're genuinely sharing the plans of the business. And then also, finally, I think we talked about those kind of coaching conversations, personal development, as well as having these bigger moments where you're setting goals, checking in. I think it's really important that it's a really live, organic conversation. It's something you talk about in small scale ways every time you talk, and it takes the onus away from those sort of annual check-ins. And by doing that, I think there's never any surprises, and that kind of idea of delivering feedback as it's pertinent, as it happens, I think is super important. So I think you can achieve a lot in a one-to-one if you set yourself some good guidelines about the kind of areas you want to cover. And as I say, it's not a strict, we must cover each of these every time, but it is a good reminder for us to go beyond the usual, here are some of the project blockers that I've got.
That is such an important point about consistency and making these meetings a priority. But let's dig deeper. How do you handle different communication styles?
Yeah, I think the main challenge, especially say in some technical teams, is that people don't always like opening up, and lots of people like to communicate in different ways. And so having this kind of, here's a framework by how we're going to discuss the sort of elements of your life that make you happy or bring you joy or that you're struggling with. I think you have to, that's why you need a bit of a buffet of options and discussion structures and tools to use, because I think it really varies. That person will open up with a different type of communication. And so, yeah, and that's when you're early on in doing this, it can feel like sometimes a bit more of a painful conversation because you just haven't quite found the style of communication or the style of coaching tool that actually works for that person.
The way you adapt your approach for different personality types is crucial, Chris. It really shows how coaching isn't a one-size-fits-all type of experience. And remember, just as master craftsmen didn't become masters alone, exceptional product leaders don't reach the top without guidance. So here are your next steps. Please subscribe and hit that notification bell. We're sharing new insights on product leadership as often as we can, and connect with our guests on LinkedIn to learn more about their approaches. And if you're ready to accelerate your product leadership journey, join us in the Top Prods community, where you'll find the mentorship, accountability, and peer support to help you master all 4 competencies that I mentioned earlier. I remember hiring a coach years ago, and it absolutely changed my career trajectory. And now it's your turn to invest in your growth. And thanks for watching. And if you're ready to dive deeper into building your product leadership skills, watch our other comprehensive guide to the 4 competencies, and you'll find the link in the description. Until next time, I'm Ross Webb. Bye for now.